Recorded October 16th, 2025. Welcome back, Frank. How you doing, man?
Good, Edward. How are you doing? Where's Rod tonight?
I don't know where Rod is. Rod is traveling. Rod is speaking and spreading the good word and the gospel. That's what he does. Hey, it's been a minute. How you been? How your dog? How your family? How's TV? How's everything in your life? Where have we been? The people have demanded that we come back. What's up?
I've been in the world of AI and going crazy because a lot of people don't know what Microsoft's doing to help secure and deal with AI. So that's why I'm like, I got to get the show going again so we can talk about this.
Yeah.
How about you?
A little bit. Work, a few things. I got an adult clothing on. I'm not in sweatpants and stuff like that. But hey, let's go ahead and we're deviating a little bit. We'll get back to some of the nuances that are part of the show. We generally have our guest, and my guest is Alistair today, but instead of putting him in the green room, we put him immediately here so we can listen to the ramblings of two restless minds. So we're back. Thanks to our listeners and patrons and partners and fans and detractors and everybody in between for indulging us for the last almost 3 months where we took a summer break. We had a bunch of shakeup, new jobs, new roles, new duties, new distractions. Frank's was doing his thing. I was doing my thing. For those, we had some shows that were sort of pre-published that we're going to have some guests on and some topics. Rest assured, we will get back to those things. We'll add them back on the back end of the year and get us going strong. But I think that the summer break was necessary. We all had so many things going on. I missed the show, but I fought in the temptation to come back and try to do mini shows and stuff in between. And I just want to say, hey, you know what? Let's go back and recharge, and just let's be consumer of the technology and the news, and go listen to some of the other podcasts out there that we enjoy. There was a lot of business travel. I know you had some stuff going on, both personal and nothing bad, but personal. So we just did stuff, right? I grew a beard. I think I might have had a beard for the show ended, but I got one. So how that goes, it's amazing what you can do with AI, maybe. And then we adjusted the show notes. The show episodes, because we want to keep them concurrent. I think the skip shows are still being represented by what we would have had as far as show episodes. I'm not really sure. I need to go back and check. I think Rod put all this stuff together. Rod will be around. He's late. I think he's traveling, because he did say that this will be a hard one for him to make, because I was supposed to be with him, and he's speaking at a security event, but I just got back from Texas, so I just couldn't make it work, and I'm supposed to be somewhere else. I'm like, oh my God, it's eating me up. So probably not the most optimum time to sort of reintroduce the show, but hey, you got to take the Band-Aid off and get going. So to our listeners, we're back. The crew, myself, Rodney Trent, Franklin Grimberg, and Edward Walton are back. This is the original cast. Brody decided to continue his hiatus. So when and what day he'll get back, we don't know, but he's still listening, probably in the background running Discord or something. Noodle's back. We got Gary back. We got everybody's been asking. I had numerous people say, hey, when is the podcast coming back? I feel energized. I think the show schedule is like, 277. Is this thing on? And Raw wrote it in notes. After the first ever summer break, we're back. 78 is going to be a deliberate topic that we're going to talk about fishing, I believe, carving pumpkins. But for right now, we do have an expert, Alistair Pugan. Did I say it right?
It's Pugan, like plugin.
Like Pugan.
So, yeah.
Yeah, see Pugan. There you go.
Well, I remember when I came back, I said the number one rule that I had is not to have MVPs on the show. But, I already broke the rule, So,
I know. That's what rules are for, right? Rules are to be broken and to be tried. And you have an MVP on the show. It's it's irony, right? Hey, I'm reviewing your MVP application as we speak right now. Like, I'm gonna have to go ahead and deny it.
Right.
Denied.
It's another rejection, just to reject. So what Edward does is every year he puts me into MVP nomination just to watch me get rejected for the fun of it. So
I'm sick.
um,
I have no idea why I do that.
yeah, it's too much fun. Well, so I'll do a quick intro and I'll let Alistair do a full introduction to him. I've been going crazy going to events. Everybody's talking about how do I secure Microsoft 3 or Copilot, Microsoft 365, and even some Microsoft events. It's driving me crazy because a lot of people don't understand some of the tools that are available to them. And then Alistair said, "Hey, I also like to talk about some identity stuff." So I'm going to let Alistair introduce himself because he will do a better job than I will.
Thanks, Frank. Alistair Pugan. I live and work in sunny South Africa, in Cape Town. I've been on the show before a couple of years ago.
One of my favorite places. I love Cape Town.
Yeah. And for my sins, Frank has always dragged me around when I need to talk about anything to do with compliance and information protection. So probably for the last 5 years, we've been, helping Microsoft shape the exam stuff. So, SC400. We even put together. We built a game with Microsoft during COVID. I've actually got the board game framed at my office. I actually finally got it into a frame. I've got a second one because I asked for a second one, and it's actually in my cupboard over here. But I got the board game and the comic book, and I can't remember what the other thing was.
Let me tell you a funny story about the game. Okay, remember the game is all about deception, right?
Yeah.
So we're doing design sessions, and it was Alistair, me and Andre. So we'd go in and they would show us the game, all that stuff, and Alistair and Andre would make comments about it. What they didn't know for the first 4 or 5 months is that I'm the one that designed all the attack and defenses. Finally, when I let them know, they just died laughing. That the big deception on them was the fact that I designed the attacks and deceptions of the game. So that was great.
Insider risk of a sort, right? You got hustled. That's what we call in the United States. You got hustled.
Yeah.
You go.
Yeah. It was a great time, and I've been doing information protection probably for about 15 years. When it's even longer than that, when it was still part of Active Directory in Windows Server 2003, ADRMS, and it's obviously transitioned into what it is today. And like Frank says, the world has lost their mind and their marbles when it comes to handing out AI indiscriminately, right? And it's fascinating. It's sort of I come from a knowledge management background, and for the last 30 years, we've been telling people to classify and categorize their data. Nobody listens. You write the governance doc, and they take the document, sign it, and they put it in a filing cabinet somewhere, and they show it to auditors when they show up. And the same people that we've designed those governance documents for have come back to us and say, can you fix our information architecture because we want AI and we're scared what AI is going to do with our data. Mm-hmm. So I suppose it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? We throw AI at people, and at the rate that Microsoft is handing out AI because they've moved the goalposts once again, and now everyone gets AI. Doesn't matter if you have a Copilot license or you don't have a Copilot license. AI is now going to show up in your favorite application, and you're going to have the chat interface, and people are just continually not knowing what to do with AI. Mm-hmm. And when business goes to IT and says, "Hey, we want AI," and the C-levels are going, "Yes, sure, just tell them I said you could have a license." Things get switched on, and it's a wild west. It's a free for all, and nobody follows the guidelines. Nobody follows any of the guidelines. Nope. And then you've got 1,000, 2,000 Copilot licenses deployed inside of an organization. They've done nothing with data security, absolutely nothing with data security, and it's like the Google search appliance debacle of 2008. All over again. People are finding content they shouldn't have. The risks are so high, but everyone wants AI. So, Frank, from your side, I don't know what else you've seen. Is that an accurate sort of description of what the world looks like?
You know what the cool thing is? I got to come in on. You got the coolest hat. You got all the generations of the hat. I can see the Copilot one there. You got the 365 one there. And is that Vivo on the end? I can't tell what that is.
No, this one is Copilot Studio, Microsoft 365, and then obviously the Copilot logo. We hosted the first Agent Con on the planet, well, external Agent Con on the planet in Johannesburg in January for Donna Sarker. She was doing the internal stuff, and then we had the first one. So I like swag, and I had these made, and yeah, I thought it was, topical to show up dressed up wearing Agent Con sort of things, right?
Agent Con, that's funny because
yeah.
When we get to the next show, we'll get some updates on some of those things because a couple of things came across. I didn't have time to curate it before the show notes. Lazy on my part. We'll get better at it, but I like to have.
I mean, what I'm seeing is that people don't understand how Copilot works. So the only thing that they're being told right now is identity and labeling, and that's it. And I'm like, hey, what about data security posture management for AI and Purview, and so on. So I just, that's before we get to the Azure, to the Foundry stuff and them understanding what's going on on that side of it. So, I just see either people that don't understand, they're too scared to implement, and so on. I'm like, there are tools out there for you to monitor what's going on inside your environment. And that's what no one is talking about, and it's just driving me crazy. Sitting there listening to people, they're like, hey, so for Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, there's this thing called Security Copilot that you should be using. I'm like, what? So this is what I'm hearing in presentations, and where the failure to communicate is, I'm not sure about the basics that need to be done and how this can be monitored inside the Microsoft 365 environment.
Look, there's a couple of parts, right? We'll talk about no code, low code, and pro code. The pro code's the stuff that happens inside of Foundry before we start looking at how do we secure, in very much the same way that we secure identities or any sort of content inside of the environment. How do we secure AI, right? And again, this Security Copilot is loosely coupled but mutually exclusive from the typical approach to it. Now, inherently, I mean, Microsoft's done a fantastic job at providing you with a plethora of information around your approach to AI inside of your organization. Adoption.microsoft.com/Copilot. It's been around since they launched Copilot. I actually asked the Twitterverse, I think it was yesterday, how many customers do they know of that actually took a pragmatic approach to rolling out AI? And it starts there, right? So are you going to form an AI council? Does the organization know what AI means? Are you going to run through a technical readiness assessment of, can your organization start consuming AI, right? And then also having a effective communication plan to actually drive adoption and change management. And they're going to teach you what AI is, how to use it, all of those things. And then also identifying the use cases for AI. Because even before we jump into the security stuff, you hand out AI to someone. I was pulled into a large alcoholic beverage company. I won't mention the name. And they started handing out Copilot to the executives. And they said, can you have a conversation with our executives about using AI, specifically Copilot? And every session was different. You speak to supply chain, they're going to do it differently. You speak to marketing, they're going to do it differently. And nobody spends the time on understanding how you can use AI to reduce your time to value as someone that works in the organization. Right. Number one, they don't do that.
Interesting thing to interrupt you is that you said something, and being long in the tooth is like Frank and I, you said change control. And change control was one of those things that was like the bad word because it often inflicted, resistance or, schedule disruption. But I find it very hard to really get someone's definition, and then not this topic, but it always goes, how do you manage change control from AI when AI in any form or fashion, it looks like shadow IT? And that's a topic for another show, because it very much looks like it. I can turn it on and it can be intrusive, but at the same time, very much under the cover where you don't see it. So how do you manage change control? So maybe that's a topic for another show, but please continue.
Look, from a change control, this should blow your hair back, right? Anyone with a Microsoft 365 Copilot license has currently the right to build an agent, right? You can go and say, create new agent, go to Copilot Studio with a Copilot license. This is not the capacity stuff that you would need a Copilot Studio tenant license. If you've got an M365 Copilot license, create agent, it will open up Copilot Studio. If you kind of know what you're doing, great, hit the publish button. Where does that go when they publish the agent? Any idea?
Oh, well, I know from personal experience, I won't go into details, but I got a nasty graph for somebody that worked for us. Like, what are you doing?
every agent registers an application in Entra.
Yeah.
Every agent. Remember, it needs graph API permissions into some area to go talk to. And if you add knowledge and it's SharePoint, that's what it's going to do, right? It's going to add
it's just compute.
sites.read.all, right?
It's just compute.
Yeah.
But it is a compute mechanism that emulates a biological entity, because it creates an ID that looks like a person is the person that does it. And that's another topic, right?
Yeah. So it's literally going to create, and that's why, Frank, I said I want to talk about, non-human identities, right? Because imagine an organization of 60,000 people and you hand out 10,000 licenses. That agent sprawl that you're going to get, right, just from an end user, and it's going to get worse, just from an end user living inside of Entra as a non-human identity. It's right there. So you want to look at shadow IT sprawl? If you're not speaking to the identity admins, right, they're going to end up with 200-300 app registrations there, and they don't get to govern what happens with the API permissions, right? They don't. It depends on what the structure, the construct of the agent itself in Copilot Studio. So, we'll get to that sort of pro code or low code section. But right now, when coming back to sort of prompt injection or whatever you want to call it, outside of locking down content, right? And there's the technical readiness program from the adoption side actually takes you through the entire thing that you need to do. And it goes back to, what you should be doing anyway, outside of now switching on data security posture management and data security posture management for AI, because Microsoft built it, it lives inside of Purview. E3 or E5, you can switch it on. Obviously, with an E5, you can do a little bit more. And there's a great article, it was published on the 2nd of October on the Purview blog in tech community about, splitting it into two areas. Security for AI, which is, secure AI, what we want to talk about today. And then AI for security, which is the security co-pilot stuff, right? Mm-hmm. That's stupidly expensive when you switch it on. But I mean, we can talk about that in a bit. So the first thing you need to do is, outside of forming an AI council, a cloud center of excellence to understand AI inside of your organization, you've got to lock down your content, right? So you've got to close the gates or create some sort of guardrails around, are you classifying and categorizing your content so that you prevent data leaks, right? Because if you're not locking down AI inside of your organization, someone can grab a document that doesn't have a sensitivity label on it, and like they would normally do, they'd upload it to someone's Dropbox, or in this case, they're going to put it into ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity, and they're going to ask Perplexity to read the document and summarize it, right? That's what most people are doing today. Give me the top 10 points from this document because it's 46 pages long and I don't want to read it, right? Now, inside of Microsoft 365, that is still okay, right? Because your guardrail, your boundary is the tenant. That's where it's living. And Microsoft today still maintains that they do not train their models on your data. Right? Today. But they're working in Anthropic. And they're maintaining that Anthropic is not going to train their models on your data. We don't know what it's going to be like in 3 to 6 months. But you've got to start classifying and categorizing your data so that you protect it from malicious intent when it comes to what your users are doing with AI and where your users are dumping AI. And there's a ton of controls inside of Purview that allows you to monitor AI usage. Shadow AI is one of the things that you can monitor, right? And there's a ton of things you can do. I mean, from an endpoint DLP perspective, you can lock down the desktop. There's a bunch of plugins. I wouldn't say plugins, it's there already. Inside of Purview, where you can monitor AI usage. So if they're going to Gemini, pick a flavor, Meta, it doesn't really matter. You can start monitoring AI usage inside of your organization before you lock down everything, right? So you want to know what AI they're consuming, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, AI that lives inside of Notion. There's a browser agent, right, inside of, and what's nice about it is there's a Noddy's guide. Follow the steps, switch on auditing, and make sure that the browser agent, it lives in Edge. You have to enable it in Chrome and Safari. And then you start onboarding your devices into Purview from a monitoring perspective, and then let it run and sit back and wait a month, and then you'll be able to see what's going on, because you need to get.
So, Alistair, we got a comment from one of our listeners that says that in one of your comments you said that it's a disclaimer that it doesn't use your tenant data to train its models. Can you give a little bit more clarification on that?
So remember, I wouldn't say the war, but when we look at the efficacy of AI, the GPT side, because what it does is it reads your prompt, and then it tokenizes it, creates tokens and inferences, and it gives you an answer, right? Like asking a teacher a question, they'll formulate an answer and they'll give it to you in the best possible way. Now, on the back of that is what we call a language model, and they come in different sizes. So when you look at ChatGPT and everyone else, they train the model to be better at responding. So if you go into Copilot today, there's a little icon that says try GPT-5, right? Because OpenAI has released the latest version of their GPT. GPT-5, it's got advanced reasoning, it's got memory and all of those things. Now, it's like any human, right? You take a kid, send it to school, and it starts learning things, right? And the more experiences it has, the better it can formulate an answer. Now, if you go into Grok on X, they literally training, and this is why Elon was so excited about what he could do with AI, because he's got the full history of X, not like American history X, but the full history of X that he can use to train the model to become more intelligent, right?
Which I believe is called Grok Super Heavy. If you
So let me ask you this, Alistair. I have a SharePoint site, right? And there's documents out there for Frank's super secret project, right?
Yeah.
And Edward, who's a user, low-level user in my environment, says, tell me about Frank's super secret project. Tell me what's happening in the background, technically, for Copilot to access that information. There's no labels, no nothing. So tell me how that works.
Copilot is just supersized search. That's all it is in your Microsoft 365 tenant, right? It's literally just supersized search. They'll talk about semantic indexing and the semantic kernel, but all it really is the search engine runs, and it's got a crawl account that literally goes and finds new data inside of your tenant, and then it will take that and it will add it to the search index. Obviously, you've got an access control list like any search works. It's really just supersized search. Copilot has got access to that entire index. So what it does is, Edward says, hey, show me Frank, find information about Frank's super private project, right? Copilot goes and it fetches that data. It goes, great, I've got access to everything. I've got guard rights to the index. It will go and pull that data back and then in very much the same way that search works, it will do security trimming. I found 7 documents referencing Frank's super secret project. Does Ed have access to that document? No, he doesn't. It's not going to return a result. It will not return a result. And that's the great part.
So that's the identity access management. And then the next layer is the classification, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
basically, it's just a big Copilot is just a big query, a natural language query engine to go out there and pull it in if it has access to it, number one, and if the classifications are in place.
Look, it's got the language model is where the understanding lives, right? So it's a natural language query prompt. You speak English to it, it gives you an answer in English and can formulate, and depending on how well you write that prompt, it will actually formulate the answer in a very specific way. And that's why, prompt engineering is a thing. Learn how to write a good prompt, right? And you'll get the right information. But that's one of the benefits of using Copilot. And I'm not just saying this because, I do stuff with Microsoft. The benefits of using Copilot versus any other AI is that you've got all the security and all the controls pre-baked, pre-packaged. You don't have to switch things on and off. You don't have to worry about access control lists. It does the security trimming for you anyway. So when you switch on Copilot, give Copilot to a user, Copilot's got access to all your data. If your security and your access control is done correct, then they will not see the data that they shouldn't see. Doesn't matter how much you try to trick it to show you that information. It's not going to show you that information. As far as I know, I might be proven completely wrong with
just as long as
some,
in the first place
prompt injection stuff.
So just as long as the first place, if Edward does not have access to it, he won't see it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, that sort of makes sense because I was a fan of probably not a well-known collaboration product that was hugely powerful, and I sort of kept it to myself. But Microsoft Delve was extremely powerful.
Yeah,
the way it went out because they wanted to please you, it wanted to find that data, and people were oversharing, and I was like, wow, right? And the minute that I forget what maybe superseded that ability to see certain things around that thing, it shrunk immensely. So whereas I could put in a casual show me Alistair's, resume. I mean, I'm telling you, you can see all this stuff. That doesn't happen. And I don't really think Delve is a thing anymore. I think everything is
it's gone. It's gone.
It's gone. Okay.
Gone.
Yeah. But I can see where you're going with it. And you're not you're nothing is ever just demonstrably true. You're saying that the Copilot is just supersized indexing, right?
Yeah.
Well, isn't that all right? Because we're still playing with the words artificial intelligence. We're still playing with it, right? And we said on this show, I will rate artificial intelligence the minute it can purposely, for its own benefit, deceive me. Right?
I don't like calling it AI because that AI covers way too many things.
It covers too many.
We have to be very product specific about what we're talking about. So let me ask you, what does data security posture management for AI give you? Because that's the one thing that I hear is I can't monitor what's happening with Copilot inside of Microsoft 365. I hear that over and over again. So what does DSPM give you for AI?
Well, hold on before we use all these acronyms. First time back in the show in 2 months. Frank's already acronyming them to death. What is DSPM, Frank?
Data security posture management.
There's a couple of flavors, right? It started off as data security posture management, which is a thing on its own. Right.
Okay.
Like you have cloud security posture management, like you have application security posture management. And there's 2 flavors, right? We'll talk about structured and unstructured data. Right now, and we're not talking about unified data governance when it comes to purview. We're talking about data security. And Frank and I have been on calls where we debate the use of the word data security because it doesn't include data lifecycle management, even today. I think it should, and we've debated it, but no, they haven't added it yet. So when you look at data security, right, as a Microsoft term, let's call it that, they talk about information protection, so sensitivity labels, locking down content. They talk about data loss prevention. They talk about insider risk management. Those are the three things that they kind of focus on when it comes to DLP. Forget information barriers and all of those things. And then they've got a compliance side that talks to compliance manager, records management, and data lifecycle management split, right? And then they've got all the structured data stuff that lives inside of a SQL database and any externalized stuff that's around unified data governance. So what they've done is they said, well, you need to start looking at security around unstructured data. Word documents, PowerPoint, slides, Excel spreadsheets. The Office stack, even a Loop workspace, right? You need to start caring about securing that data, making sure that they are retained for X amount of time, making sure that there's no data loss because of a nefarious character, deleting stuff, making sure that you can monitor end user behavior inside of the organization. Again, insider risk, you should be monitoring those things. Someone today has decided to download 200 documents and they've never done that before. Identity might be compromised, right? And it will all come back to identity. So what data security posture management does is that, and then the AI part literally starts looking at what your organization is doing with AI. So the tool is there. It's super simple. You got to switch on Purview Audit because you need an audit log of all these interactions with AI. You switch on the browser extension. That's the simple thing. Onboard devices. And then you're taking all that telemetry data and it's going into some form of dashboard. You can start looking at reports, AI usage specifically, not just, and there's extensibility into Defender for Cloud apps and a whole bunch of other things. You can also plug third-party apps into it.
Defender for Cloud apps, baby. I like this guy already. He's a winner. He's a winner.
When he says Purview Audit, he's talking about the Unified Audit Log, or UAL, that you'll hear a lot of people talk about out there, just a FYI for people listening. So can I see, when people go out there and say, can you give me the payroll for everyone in the company? Will I be able to see somebody typing that, that logged into Copilot?
From a prompt perspective, you can monitor that, yes. So first-party products, right? So if someone types that into Copilot, you can pick up on that. But you also have to define what you want to look for, because there's also the other side of things. Invasion of privacy is a thing. You shouldn't be. Are you going to read someone's emails if they're mailing? It's all about monitoring and what you. Now, there's a few ways you can do that. You can use sensitive information types if they're looking for documents labeled as highly confidential and they want to snoop. Right, or you can actually it's trainable classifiers. I think, if I'm correct, it might come at an additional cost, but you can define keywords, lack of a better word, right? That AI should be monitoring, not just how they're consuming. So what AI platforms they're hitting, because that's the big thing around shadow AI. If you don't have sensitivity labels, and they drag a document into Gemini, that's it, right? Someone else has got your data and they might be training the model against it, or whatever people think that, nefarious AI, when we're not talking about Ghost GPT or Worm GPT yet. So you can monitor and you can get insights into AI usage in very much the same way that you could get insights into the stuff that you get at communication compliance, so hate speech, all of those things. You can flag those things and you can pull that data. You can also get information into if people are trying to trick AI, or they're saying, hey, I want to give me the recipe for a Molotov cocktail. Responsible AI. It will monitor key activities that, that. So it's definitely, people just are not switching the tool on, and some of the stuff, because what it does is to create all these policies, right? So what it does, it spins up a whole bunch of DLP policies, and it starts using that engine to monitor things as well. And there's a Noddy's guide, man. It's a couple of steps. It will spin up these policies for you. So if you had to go and say, simple one, right? If you look at the guide, it says extend your insights for data discovery, right? Detect sensitive information shared in AI prompts in Edge, right? Detect when users visit AI sites. Detect sensitive info pasted or uploaded to AI sites. That's straight out of the box. They will build all those policies for you. You can sit back and you can stare at a dashboard, right? So Microsoft does take you quite a long way forward in a very, very short period of time. Takes less than, I mean, if you want to configure this, it's going to take less than a couple of hours. You know, it's got to propagate the data. And if you've never switched on the audit log, it's going to take 24 hours to spin that up.
You're being a very bad
But
consultant,
within a
Alistair.
week.
Alistair, you're being a very bad consultant. It will take a consultant about 80 hours, right? I'm just kidding.
Well,
So,
it's easy to switch this on, but you need to know what to switch on, why it's working, and how it gets to work, and then you need to educate people about it. So definitely, this is a 12-week program.
okay. So I know that
that makes sense.
I want to watch our time here and get back to your intro point about what's going on there with the agents. Let's stay away from the pro code stuff and go deal with the low code now. And so let's talk a little bit more about that and how to deal with that situation, how you're dealing with that situation, and what you're recommending, how people can see this in their environment so they know that it's happening, and so on.
So a couple of things just on the back end of agent stuff. Microsoft also has an agent store, and not everything lives in Purview. The Copilot config stuff actually lives inside of the M365 admin center. So you have to switch things on and off there, like making agents that are not produced by Microsoft or your company available to everyone. Because if you go into the agent store, you can deploy an agent, right? That's not produced or that's not published by your organization. So there's a couple of technical things, well, not technical things, but config things that you need to do so that people don't just randomly deploy agents, not Copilot Studio agents that are built by other organizations. Because right now, straight off the bat, this is not Linux, this is Microsoft. Everything is on by default, right? It's not like you have to switch things on. It's on. People can consume it. Give them a license and away you go, right? They're creating their own agents. They're deploying third-party agents in very much the same way that the Teams store, right? The app store for Teams, where, I want to run Trello inside of Teams. Hit the button. Again, what happens? If you don't have admin consent on for applications, boom, shows up inside of Entra. And
Well, let me ask you a quick question on that note then, because that question actually came up to me. You know, when you look at agents that are available during the marketplace or whatever, or ones that may be built inside Copilot Studio, but you get the impression that these are Microsoft sponsored entities, application entities. What is maybe one or two things? Having Purview is definitely one, right? So I'm only going to ask for two, maybe three if you want to be ambitious. How do you mitigate that? Like for me, I think from a reactive standpoint that if I'm using Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps or AKA MCAS, I can go back and look at these SaaS applications in the back way. But how do I go about getting this preemptive affirmation that something is telling me, hey, someone may be overprivileged? Because when you go back to this, this still is an organizational overprivilege problem, I believe, that anyone can deploy this agent. Because if you do this, and I believe you said this earlier, Copilot Studio is not cheap when you run it. Because I think we have two flavors now. You got the free version and you got the other.
So from a capacity perspective, there's stuff that you can do around a capacity. At Copilot Studio, you get a tenant license, which is free, and you get a whole bunch of things around that. And that's for people that don't have an M365 Copilot license that want to build agents.
Okay.
That's licensed differently. And then you can also build agents and give it to people who don't have a Copilot license, and that's called a premium capacity license.
Yes, premium capacity.
For $200 a month, you get 25,000 messages. Now, a single prompt is not a single message. You can write a complex prompt and it might consume 14 messages. Right? So let me just qualify that.
So within that, is there the capacity within, so Purview's number one, we already got that they can sit here and say, hey, this adoption of just going to the marketplace and grabbing an agent, like you just gave, I think you said Twilio or something, and making it manifest up in Teams. What it will be the easiest low-hanging fruit for someone to come in to try to mitigate that behavior?
If you don't have an application security posture management strategy, this should give you, it should be the startling reality that you need one, right? Because it doesn't matter. An agent's an application. It's an application. It's going to show up in Entra, like deploying SAP or any Teams app. Remember, the agent wants to talk to content living inside of your tenant. Could be in Loop, it could be in OneNote, it could be in your OneDrive, it could be in SharePoint, it could be in Teams, right? The substrate. The agent wants to talk. The application wants to talk to everything that's living in the backend. So what is it going to do? App registration, yeah? And then it's going to go and say, well, I need to grant permissions to specific services. Oh, I want to read from a document library in a SharePoint site. What do I need? Oh, I need sites.read.all, right? It's the same thing. So you do need an application onboarding and, more importantly, offboarding policy inside of your organization for agentic stuff. It's an application. It's going to show up in your app registration, right? It's going to show up. You're going to either, I can't remember, there's a service principal or a managed identity that gets spun up. I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember.
Managed identity.
But, yeah. And look, and that's why offboarding is important, right? So if you're no longer using the agent, delete it, because then the identity dies with it, right? Unlike a service principal, yeah? So you need an application security strategy around admin consent and all the default things that you would normally, go on and switch on inside of, application security for identity or identity security posture management would include human identities and non-human identities, because this is all non-human, right? I haven't read anything around escalating privileges. Microsoft's done a good job around making sure that the premise of least privilege is adopted and deployed when an agent gets deployed. And there's no privileged roles associated with an agent anyway. So it's a good thing. But when you start looking at expanding, the extensibility, we're not talking about MCPs, right? Very different architecture behind that. You can connect an MCP to a Copilot, to an agent, right? There's a lot of that going on. But outside of Purview, to protect your own data, you need to make sure that you've got an identity strategy for non-human identities.
So
I think the mindset. Go ahead, Frank.
They just took away permissions management. I guess that's or what was that called? The thing that checked for overprivileged, non-used permissions. They actually deprecated that out of Entra.
Was that Privo?
No, that's not Privo. That's a Purview thing, I think. So it's the thing that it's the product that they bought that you could say, oh look, you've overprivileged this. They're not using those privileges and so on. They deprecated that product. But the bottom line is that if you have a logging on, I basically wrote my own KQL to actually do what they were doing using using Copilot. So
it used to be a product that Microsoft bought called CloudKnox.
Yeah. So that's been deprecated. So but you can write your own now. They have a third party that they send you over to now if you want that sort of stuff. But I'd imagine there's a lot of KQL that will be written, just as long as you have the logs in place to validate this. Like I said, I did my own and in Copilot, just asking the questions.
Yeah, it's a lot of new thinking that's happening to go around. Even though people think this AI thing is really taken off, if you have to look at 100-foot view, we're really only about 15 feet above the ground.
So tell me about agent governance. How is that being handled now? Copilot, not. Let's stay away from ProCode. I get all that stuff.
So what happens when you build an agent? Yeah, or the agents that currently live inside of your environment? There's two places to govern it. One, you can go into the M365 Admin Center, and there's a blade for Copilot, and you can see all the agents that live inside of your environment. Currently in preview inside of DSPM for AI, you can get the same blade, apps and agents. Right now, you must remember it's not just it's all the agents that get built inside a Copilot Studio. It's Microsoft 365 Copilot. There's Copilot in Fabric. There's the security Copilot if you want to monitor that. You can now bring ChatGPT Enterprise in as a as a full fidelity application that lives inside of it, and then also the stuff that happens inside of Microsoft Teams. Now, remember, Copilot that lives in Word is an agent. Copilot that lives in Power, they're all agents. They're all the same thing, right? And you've got multiple agents. You've got an interpreter agent. You've got a facilitator agent. You've got a meeting recap agent. And you can monitor what those things actually do. And they'll actually show up now inside of, it's in public preview, the apps and agents tab inside of DSPM for AI, so that you can actually monitor usage, consumption, all the risky stuff that you want to actually monitor because you're worried about what people are asking AI, right? Because remember, that chat interaction actually lives inside of the user context. That's where it goes, right? Because you can have a history of all your chats. It's very much the same way as, a personal's OneDrive is a personal OneDrive, right? You can get access to it, but the telemetry data, if you tell it what you're looking for, it will pull back anything that's regarded as irresponsible AI usage inside of the organization. You do have the tooling to monitor.
Are they storing prompts like they store chat with inside Teams, same sort of engine?
It's in the substrate, yeah.
Okay.
But it's the user context inside. It's all exchange on the back end, man. As much as we don't want to admit it, it's a group and exchange, right? So that's pretty much where it goes. But the tooling does exist for you to actually actively and accurately understand AI consumption, be it Copilot or any other AI tool that your user on their desktop is using. Because you can pull that data.
All right,
when we turn the audit on, and assume that we go into the unified audit log and we turn on verbose, whatever that verbose may be, are we able to watch the activities from an agent creation all the way, if desired, to termination and see exactly what happened? Because what is happening is that I'm starting to see more security executives or just information executives go, yeah, we caught the problem, but what was the, I won't say blast sentence, what was the fallout? How much data got exposed? What was said that we may not know about? Is there a way to accurately track everything within agents? Because you're starting to see people like myself who come from a log aggregation and threat detection and threat forensics that go back and say, oh my God, I cannot complete a complete picture of what happened because of this thing. Does Purview get me close to this so that I can go back and when whomever my boss says, tell me what happened, give me a readout, Edward. Can I effectively give a readout?
From a scene perspective, yeah. You should be able to track that 100%. If you really wanted to, you can go throw a stupid amount of money at Security Copilot and then ask Security Copilot to go do the investigation for you, because you can switch that on, right? They actually they encourage that inside of DSPM for AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody wants to write KQL anymore, right? Or the kids, don't want to write; they want to ask Copilot to do it for you, right? So Security Copilot will do all of that, but it's a log and it's going to suck into, and they've got prompt books and a whole bunch of things that will help you interpret and understand any signals that's coming from AI in the way that you need to understand it to make the right decisions around how AI gets consumed and produced and consumed inside of your organization.
Mm-hmm.
So we're running up against time here. I want to make sure that I hit these 3 points and ask Alistair a final question here. So Alistair, tell us about this adoption site that you mentioned before. I don't know if everyone knows about that. Real quick.
It's the Microsoft adoption site, adoption.microsoft.com. There's a ton of /Copilot. If you just land on the adoption, everything's Copilot. So you don't have to navigate away from that. Also important, they've got an entire program that supports what you should do. Nobody does it. And that's my opinion. I mean, we're running a series called Copilot Zero to Hero right now to help educate people on how to deploy Copilot, consume Copilot, and monitor Copilot inside of the organization. Because, and who worries about this now, right? That's the big thing. Who worries about agents now? It's the same thing we said around who worries about applications that now live inside of Entra. Is it an identity a problem? Is it an application problem? Is it an infrastructure problem? Who worries about it? Because it's the same thing here. Who's going to worry about AI? Do you have an AI strategy inside of your organization? Do you have specific approved AIs? Like law firms would use Microsoft 365 Copilot and Harvey.ai or Gilo. They'd have approved AI that can be consumed. So you need that strategy straight off the bat before you start handing out licenses, because then you can, at least from a blast radius perspective, contain that. Imagine someone's got the latest wonder drug from Pfizer, right? And they've got the report for it, and it's a 400-page document. They don't want to read it, and they upload it to Gemini, or they upload it to Claude, and then that data gets somehow leaked, right? We want to stop people from exposing confidential information to other AIs, number one. And we want to monitor from a shadow AI usage perspective what people are doing with AI not in a browser. Let me qualify that, in a browser, right? Yeah. If you deploy Perplexity on your desktop, like any other application, I use Perplexity because I like it. So if you deploy the app on a desktop, you can't monitor that. It's only living in the browser. You need some endpoint DLP stuff. Yeah. And then from a consumption perspective, if you are actually going to sniff network, because you can sniff network with SASE, right? If you're going to go down that route, you can start doing proper network inspection. It comes at a cost, but then any packet going in and out, you can sniff on that desktop, right? Yeah. So the tools exist. It's the same with workload ID protection. Comes at a cost. You can take all those non-human identities or the applications, because there's always an identity associated with an application in Entra. You can spend the money and you can monitor that as well, right? Not just monitoring a risky sign-in because you've got an impossible travel policy that's been breached.
I think you made a good point, and you made a point without trying to make that point. Is that you said got to spend the money. Here's why I believe the money needs to be spent. You have a lot of security thought leadership, and you have a lot of information in operational thought leadership, and I'll correlate those to CIOs and CISOs. They're not always on the same page, and they're always on the same mission scope. Yeah. You have to hire talent. That CIO needs a chief AI officer, or that CISO needs a deputy CISO with a focus on AI specific security things. Because what is happening in I'm just listening to these conversations. I go to these mix-ups, I go to these webinars, and you see these things. Nobody's willing to admit that they are overwhelmed in the ability to understand what is happening to them. It is happening to you, and you don't know it. And so I believe that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to take maybe practitioners and elevate them into thought leadership. It is time to take the hands on the keyboard gentleman, or whomever it may be. And you got to get them into a point where they are advisory rather than delivery. Because what is happening, these executives are overwhelmed and they will not admit it. They will not admit it. They're going out. They don't know how to hire. They definitely don't know how to fire. They feel pressure because I think I coined this term on this show last year, COFOMO, corporate fear of missing out. You cannot be the company that does not say you're not using AI, because otherwise you're seen inferior. So you're having to do this. And Microsoft is uniquely positioned, and I am a proud employee of Microsoft and stockholder. I make sure I put that on the show. There you go. That's it right there. That very few companies other than the big four, when I say the big four, I'm not talking about PwC, no, I'm talking about Microsoft, AWS, Google, and Oracle. Now, people will say Meta, but Meta doesn't own their cloud. They're renting cloud. Yeah. Buy a data center and do your own thing, then I'll believe what you're saying. Right, you do these things, but we got to hire the talent, and this is something we talked about on this show. And I'd like to make sure that we cover this. To the listeners of the show, the most important thing is this is a chance for you to hire and or elevate and or reskill your talent to be able to take on these nuances, because your thought leadership is insufficient and inadequate to be able to understand what is about to happen to them. And this is where you go find that talent. That is my PSA to everybody. And you got that consulting for free. You better go find these practitioners and elevate them into leadership, not managers, leaders, because you're going to find yourself on the wrong side of the football, whether it be a soccer football or American football, if you don't do this. So you got two choices in AI, either offense or defense. I like to be neither. I like to be the coach or the owner of it. There you go. Because Frank has this thing he used to tell me, you can't stop a hacker. You got to make them punt. Frank taught me this years ago. You got to make them punt. When these guys are hacking at you, you can't stop them from scoring a touchdown. Make them punt this ball and start back on their side of the field and come back. And eventually they'll go play another game. They don't want to play against you anymore. And I'll leave it at that.
All right. So three things, action items. Go to the adoption site. The second thing is get to know DSPM for AI. I know that there's a Learn module out there, and start researching the non-human identities and how that's impacting your organization. We're up at time. So Alistair, how can people find you and learn more about you and follow you and continue learning from you?
I'm on the socials. I'm on IG. I'm on X. Probably the easiest place to find me is on X, because everyone's gone back after people moving to Blue Sky. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. Hit me up on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest place. Alistair Pugan. That's where you'll find me. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Probably the easiest.
We'll put all your stuff in the show notes. What if I jump on a plane, just fly to Cape Town? Can I come hang out?
Absolutely.
I don't.
Pull in.
No problem. 3 years ago, I had a great time. Spent a week there. Thank you so much for being the first guest for our resurgence and coming back into this. Thanks to all of our listeners, our partners, our patrons, and everybody else, our detractors, whomever you may be. We're back. We're getting ready to get our podcast muscle back. We're out here having fun. Alistair, I'd like to invite you back on the show because this topic is too. I won't even say broad. It is too deep to try to cover one thing. Yeah. I'd like to be able to come back and really maybe you come on when we have one of our tech heavy days to get the portal and start demoing. How do I get this deployed? Because what I did is I was trying to lab something out in my P brain. I turned on DSPM in my lab. It said, I'll be back in 1 to 3 days. I was like, what? It literally told me it's going to take 1 to 3 days to do whatever it was doing in my environment. I was like, I did not know that. And so I'd like to talk to you.
Welcome to Purview.
Yeah.
Well, Purview, right? So to everyone, the Security Insight podcast is back. Frank is back. Ed is back. Alistair is here. Thank you for being our first guest. Rod is traveling, so I got a little text, so he wasn't able to be able. He'll be back for the next one. Same time. See, I fooled you. We are going to twice a month. I know we were doing every week, but until we get out the year, the next podcast will be, what do you think, Frank? We're going to fool you a little bit. We're going to do it next week, and then we're going to go to every 2 weeks. And then the first of the year, we'll may get back to our schedule of once a week. We're getting our legs up on us. Be patient. It takes a little bit, but thanks, everyone. Have a good one. Stay out of trouble. Go both ways, free across the street, things like that.
Cheers, guys.
Right.